today. So pleased to be joined by Sam Rothman, sports reporter, anchor down at WATE, Channel 6 in Knoxville, Tennessee. We had her on to talk Tennessee football at the beginning of the season. Glad to have her on again to talk Tennessee basketball. Sam, always great to have you on. I hear congratulations are in order. How are things?
Things are good. Thank you very much. Yeah, that ties in perfectly with Tennessee basketball. Rick Barnes it turned into a whole meme with him making fun of me not wearing my ring, saying that I should get it checked for it being real. But that's just, that's the gem that Rick Barnes is. So, but thank you very much. Glad to be joining on, talking about another Syracuse-Tennessee matchup.
Yeah, and this one is even more important than maybe the football game was, right? For Syracuse basketball anyway, it feels like the season is kind of on the line tonight from a non-conference perspective for the Orange. Fill us in on this Tennessee team because they've looked awfully good, awfully impressive. How do they kind of compare to the last two Tennessee teams that Syracuse has seen? They've played them each of the last 2 years. How does this one compare to those squads?
Yeah, this one's very different in terms of it's a young team, a lot of new faces, 4 new starters on this team, but the recipe for success is there. What Rick Barnes has been so successful in the portal. 2 years ago, Dalton Connect. Last year it was Chaz Lanier. This year it's Jacoby Gillespie, and they really just have not missed a beat. Now, the big difference is that Jacoby Gillespie, different from Lanier and maybe Connect in that he's also Tennessee's point guard. So that's not usually the Rick Barnes formula of the sharpshooter being the point guard as well, but the fact that he is the leading scorer on the team, also being a point guard, maybe even more impressive, right? But he's really been, Nate Ament gets all the spotlight as he should. The 5-star could be a high draft pick, right? He has been SEC Freshman of the Week 3 out of the first 4 weeks of the season. He's coming into his groove, but Jacoby Gillespie is the guy that Syracuse will have to lock down tonight from a scoring perspective, and something that's a little different from last year's team. And also, just going back to, obviously, Tennessee got knocked out of the Elite Eight last year by a Houston team. This year, Tennessee beat Houston in that same Vegas tournament, and Coach Barnes said that, maybe last year's team wouldn't have beaten Houston, but then they turned around and lost to Kansas. And he said last year's team wouldn't have done that from a mindset focus, and that's because they lost the Zakai Zieglers, they lost the Jemai Mashaks, they lost those vital leadership roles. So it is a bit of an interesting team in terms of those veteran presence aren't there, but maybe they are more talented in terms of, especially with the bigs inside, the depth is there, unlike I've seen since I've been here. So a lot of talent. The difference is that veteran leadership, though.
Yeah, and along those lines, Sam, I wanted to ask you about that Vegas trip because, Tennessee, like most, they scheduled some lesser competition early on in the year. They beat up on the lesser competition. Then they went out to Vegas for this big tournament, just like Syracuse did. Mm-hmm. And we were all like, all right, we're going to learn about this Syracuse team. Mm-hmm. What did you learn about this Tennessee team? Maybe not so much from the Rutgers game. They were better than Rutgers. But Houston and Kansas in particular, what did you learn about this team from those two games?
Yeah, from that Houston game, you definitely learned, to my previous point about those bigs. You have Felix Okpara, he's the only returning starter on the team, but then you also throw in a Jalen Carey in there. You throw in JP Estrella, who missed all of last season due to an injury. You also have Cade Phillips off the bench. You have Dwayne Brown. I mean, they're just endless inside, and talking to, some of those lesser competition teams that Tennessee has played, all of the coaches talk about how you can't stop them inside. There's just too much depth. One guy comes out and there's another, big guy coming in. So that you kind of learned, because you can't learn that as much against the lesser competition, like you said. But when you're going up against Houston with that kind of defense and you're doing that, that's a big takeaway. But then to turn around, and maybe it was fatigue, maybe it was, coming off a big win against Houston, but they looked kind of flat against Kansas. And that's something that maybe we learned is, okay, this team is missing that veteran leadership, those leaders saying, guys, pick it up. Like, this is not a gimme game either. Like Kansas, they may be unranked, but they're a really good team, So that is something that I wouldn't be shocked if Rick Barnes, he's known, to be on his players. He was on his players. We were at practice yesterday to kind of flip the page, and I wouldn't be shocked if they came out with a dominant performance against Syracuse.
Sam, you mentioned the name Nate Ament a little bit ago. What have your impressions been of him? I mean, is he top 5 NBA draft good from what you've seen? Because there's always a transition, right? But has he made that transition look seamless?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say specifically in terms of how he competes to maybe those other guys that are in the mix for that, but I've been really impressed. There are some plays that he makes and you kind of just are like, wow, you kind of are in shock because he's a freshman making these plays. He's 6'10", he's only going to grow. He's still growing, which is insane, and he's getting better every single game. And I think that's the big thing that Coach Barnes has really praised about him is these 5 stars, these guys that, are going to be one and done, a top 5 pick. They come in, maybe they think that they know everything. They've been the best player for basically their whole lives, right? But he has made it an emphasis also in Rick Barnes' system to get better on defense as well, and that's a huge thing in Barnes' system. And every single game he's gotten better. And he had a bad outing against Houston, 9 points, but then he comes out and scores 20 against Kansas. So just the resiliency, they're able to bounce back. If he has a bad shooting night, he's not afraid to keep shooting, even if they're not going in. And I think that's, big for a freshman to be able to have that, mentality.
Rick Barnes, I mentioned this stat earlier in the show. The Vols are 79-8 against unranked non-conference opponents under Rick Barnes. Does he get the credit that he deserves in the national coaching circles? Because, again, when you look at some of these stats, the loss to Kansas snapped a streak of 40 straight wins as a ranked team to unranked non-conference opponents. And, Kansas obviously is back in the polls this week. But what he's been able to do consistently year in and year out, it is remarkable. And I feel like when we look at the best coaches in the game, Rick Barnes is on the list, but maybe not necessarily towards the top of the list. Why is that?
I think it's because they say you can't win the big game. He's still searching for that trip to the Final Four. That Dalton Connect year, it really felt like they had the team to go all the way. Obviously got matched up with a tough Purdue team and Zach Edey and all that. But I think the fact that he saw how they lost to Purdue, he saw how they lost to Houston, and he made an emphasis to get the bigs this year just shows he can evaluate as a coach and see where he needs to get better and where he needs to build his roster. But yeah, I mean, if you go to a Tennessee practice and you hear Rick Barnes, he is the sweetest man off the court. Hey, what's up? He knows what's going on in your lives, like you mentioned. And then he gets on the court and he is just reaming into his players. So from my perspective, yes, I mean, he is a legend, but maybe he doesn't get that respect because he hasn't had that big win or that big run in the postseason. Now, a lot of people think that this is the Tennessee team that could do it again because of that depth piece that they have this year.
That's what people said about Jim Boeheim for so long, and then that championship in 2003 certainly that one championship changed everything in terms of how people look at you. We talked a lot about the positives, Sam, with this team and what they bring to the table. Are there any weaknesses that you have your eye on? It's still early in the season, but if you had to point to a weakness or two with this Tennessee team, what would it be?
It would probably just be the turnovers. That's something that Tennessee is known for, that defense, that aggressive defense. But Tennessee's been turning the ball over a lot themselves, got better at it in Vegas. But it's still been something that Coach Barnes says he has not liked how his team has played in terms of just guarding the ball, making smart decisions, just playing smart. He says sometimes they just play dumb and he doesn't know what they're doing out there. So that's one maybe sign of weakness. But again, that is something, just talking about Rick Barnes' system, his defense, how he, gets on his players, that is something that has progressively gotten better. And I wouldn't be shocked if it continues to get better. But if that's one thing, maybe it would be the turnovers.
I don't know how much you've had a chance to watch Syracuse. Maybe you saw a little bit of what they did out there in Vegas. If so, I mean, what are your impressions of this Syracuse team from what you've seen?
I mean, yes, Syracuse went 0-3 in Vegas, but took Houston to overtime, right? A team that Tennessee had to fight to win, held their own against Kansas. I know you guys are losing your top scorer there, but I think this is an improved Syracuse team than maybe the ones that Tennessee has faced the past 2 years. Rick Barnes thinks so. He said that he was praising Coach Autry in practice yesterday in press conference, saying that this is the best Syracuse team he thinks the team will face, and he's seen that progression. And for a coach like Rick Barnes to say that, it's a big deal, right? So I think it might be Tennessee's toughest test. Also, Tennessee's up, they've got the jackets on. They're not used to the snow. They're not used to surroundings, playing in the dome. So it could be a tough test for the Vols tonight.
All right. In terms of a blueprint for success, for how this game plays itself out, give me a formula for how you go about beating this Tennessee team. If you're Syracuse, what needs to happen tonight for this to be, a close game with 5 minutes to play in the second half?
Yeah, you need Jacoby Gillespie to just get him off his rhythm. He has been playing the best of his time at Tennessee. Keep wanting to say Syracuse. The best of his time at Tennessee so far. Early on, you could see the flashes, but those numbers really weren't there. They've been there, especially in those Vegas games. So knock him off, and that gets the whole team out of rhythm, right? And then you just have to lock down the bigs. Easier said than done. That would be the formula for success. Not a lot of teams have been able to do it, especially that Houston defense. So if there's a formula for success, get Gillespie out of his rhythm, get him off, because once he's on, he can just kind of like Lanier and Connected the past 2 years. Once he's on, he just keeps firing away, and those threes just keep pouring down. And then I don't know how to do it, but trying to stop the bigs, because if Tennessee can just keep rotating them, it could be, a tough night for the Orange up there in Syracuse.
Yeah, first true road game for Tennessee this year, although they obviously just got back from Vegas themselves. Give me a prediction tonight. Tennessee's favored by, I think we saw 6.5. Seems about right. How do you see this game playing itself out tonight inside the Dome?
Oh, you're doing this to me as a Syracuse alum.
I know.
Let's say 71-58. Tennessee.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, well, we figured as much. We all have Tennessee winning as well, just by varying margins.
What are your guys' predictions?
I said Tennessee by 5.
Okay.
Paulie, you said...
I've said 3 different things. I can't.
He said Syracuse will
cover.
Win. Right.
Syracuse will cover tonight. 6.5. Yeah, I think they'll cover.
Okay. That's the one you're sticking to?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And then Tim Leonard, our producer, he thought Tennessee would cover the spread. So we shall see.
Okay.
I think we're all in agreement that Tennessee's probably going to win this game tonight, but Syracuse desperately needs it. So we'll see how it all plays out inside the Dome. 7 o'clock tip. Sam, it's always a pleasure catching up with you. I've told you this before. You're one of my favorite former students.
Thank you so much.
Keep up the good work. Keep killing it. And
have I asked you what Steve gave you as a grade?
I don't remember, but hopefully good.
I'm sure she got an A.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure she got
I can go back and look at it. But, when I talked to Steve back in Atlanta for the football game, I got a little nervous. I told him I feel like it's a test. So, so he makes me a little nervous. I feel like I'm going to be graded.
I don't mean to make you nervous. No, you're killing it. Continued success to you, both personally and professionally.
Thank you so much.
Be well, Sam. Happy holidays, and we'll talk again soon.
You too. Looking forward to this one tonight. Have fun.
All right, Sam Rothman joining us here on the program. I'm sure she got an A because she's a very conscientious person. And if you hit deadlines and you try, and obviously she's very good at what she does. Well, you're always on time. So if you were on time, that's half the battle.
Let me ask you a question, because this made me think of something. Your coaching tree is huge, right?
It gets bigger and bigger each year. Your coaching tree has gotten bigger. So
let me ask you this. Mike Tomlin has no coaching tree. Is that weird?
A little bit. Yeah,
is that a good thing or a bad thing to not have a coaching tree? It's probably a bad thing.
I don't think that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know if it's necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think that's a good thing.
He's been a coach a long time, and there's nobody ever talks about. Right. Oh, he was Mike Tomlin's prodigy.
Yeah.
I'm turning on Mike Tomlin.
I can tell you are. All right. Let's hit our final timeout here. We'll wrap things up next on